Another day goes by, slowly drifting away. Will I catch my breath before it's gone? Please don't leave me. I am nothing all alone.
Hello, my pack, my tribe. Welcome back to Howling After Dark. Okay, so I know everybody's talking about this, um, and I'm going to get into it here in a second, but pulling up the article actually on it right now, talking about Steve Stevens, the Facebook killer. Shot I think he was like 79-year-old man, and posted it on video on Facebook, and then killed himself. He killed Robert Goodwin Sr. He was just, he was 74. He was 74. Was shot last Sunday while walking home from an Easter meal with his children in Cleveland. And Stevens pulls up and says, Gino, let's see, I forget the girl's name. Anyways, it was evidently like his ex-girlfriend or something. And said, hey, Gino, so-and-so. And he said no. He's, well, you can blame her because she's why this is happening to you. And then pulled out a gun and shot him right in the head. And then evidently took the chicken shit way out and shot himself in Pennsylvania after visiting a McDonald's. Now, this isn't necessarily paranormal news. I realize that. And I gotta say that I feel for both families involved, both the family of the victim and as well as the family of the perpetrator, Steve Stevens. But as far as I'm concerned, he deserved a lot worse than taking the coward's way out for what he did, killing an innocent man who had nothing to do with anything. Yeah, I'm sure even the girl that he had mentioned wasn't even to blame for all the crap in Stephen's life. So ultimately, it was Stevens who was responsible for Stevens. In any case, I know a lot of people have been thinking about it and talking about it and stuff, so I just wanted to say my little piece about it and get it out of the way. Now, on to other stuff. Now, I find this to be interesting because there's a website called weekinweird.com. Feel free to check the website out and kind of follow me along. But they actually have a article that is saying something that I've said like pretty much the entire time. Like for years, I've literally been saying it. Like literally, you could probably find old episodes of the show where I talk about it. But the headline says Bigfoot is a ghost solving the Sasquatch problem. So let's go to this article. Bigfoot is a ghost, interdimensional Sasquatch, the green flash, and why we'll never find a body. For researchers defending the existence of Bigfoot, a huge creature that's hiding right in our own backyard, the lack of hard evidence is a big problem. Sure, we've got plenty of plaster casts, too many blurry photos, and shaky videos to count, and we've even got loads of frightening audio recordings. But despite these and hundreds, if not thousands, of reported Sasquatch sightings each and every year, we still can't find a body. Well, there is an answer to the biggest problem of Bigfoot, and it's one that's troubling for the Sasquatch believers who consist mainly of rugged outdoorsmen and analytical scientists. Bigfoot is a ghost. Those words are equivalent to heresy in Bigfoot investigation circles. In fact, as strange as it might seem, I've even lost friends for saying that Bigfoot is a ghost, with enraged squatchers convinced I'm making light of their weekends in the forest. I can assure you, though, that I'm dead serious. There is a stranger element to Sasquatch sightings, and for paranormal researchers, these anomalies tick a lot of familiar boxes. You see, the reason we can't find flesh and blood evidence of Bigfoot is because he's not a flesh and blood creature. At least not any longer. Since its inception, the Bigfoot Field Research Organization has collected over 3,000 well-documented reports of Bigfoot all over North America. And those numbers don't count the whispered stories told after a few drinks. Animal Planet's flagship series, Finding Bigfoot, is creeping up on a 100-episode milestone. Amateur Sasquatch hunting groups have set up shop in every corner of the country, and annual events like the Ohio Bigfoot Conference attract thousands of people from around the world to attend lectures by well-respected university professors who consider the existence of the North American ape a completely logical conclusion. Now, I agree with pretty much everything this guy's saying so far, except for one thing. He's alluding that Bigfoot is a ghost, as in it once was a living creature that no longer exists. Like a missing link kind of thing that died out years and years and years ago. And that wouldn't make sense to even me. However, I think that's too simplistic of an answer. And I'm going to explain myself here in a moment. But I think what Bigfoot actually is he's an elemental. So he is a spirit, not a ghost. He has never lived in a way that we think about it. They're elemental. They belong to the forest. That's why they're always seen in or very near forests. And that could also apply to the other variations of Bigfoot too, such as the Yeti in Yemen, both from Tibet and northern China. Um, yeah, the Yeti, of course, being the abominable snowman, uh, could very likely be a ice or snow elemental. Um, Whereas the Yemen, which is related to the Yeti, is more of a foothills kind of elemental. He exists in like the foothills woods and is often seen in those woods and along those rivers. And I could go on and on and on and on with different variations, including I forget the one is called that has been spotted for years and years and years in the South American rainforest and in jungles. But I think you see what I'm getting at here. They're all elemental to their surroundings, their environment, if you will. So that's my personal theory on it. That's kind of where I split with the person that wrote this article. But other than that, we pretty much agree on pretty much everything he said. Alrighty, so uh, let's see. I'm looking at these articles, trying to figure out what I want to get into next. Because the thing about the paranormal is everybody's got differing opinions about it, and we call this paranormal news. But the truth is there's no such thing, because news is completely objective. It isn't leaning one way or the other, but they all tend to lean more towards like the negative stuff. Um, so we're going to go into something that's not quite as negative, at least it doesn't seem like it is. The headline is, I spent the night investigating Niagara's haunted Fort George and captured ghostly soldiers on camera. As a longtime paranormal investigator and proud Canadian, I've been lucky enough to have had the chance to spend the night inside many of Ontario's most infamously haunted locations. And while there are many amazing places that stand out in my mind, Niagara's Fort George will go down in history as one of the most fascinating and frightening investigations I've ever conducted, and the spooky evidence speaks for itself. In 1802, the octagonal fort was built on the opposite shore from the American Fort Niagara, and housed local militia, the Aboriginal lawyers, and the British Army. The fort was massive and made up of guardhouses, blockhouses, and hospitals, kitchens, barracks, and completely surrounded by a dry ditch to keep it protected from the Americans. Unfortunately, all the precautions didn't stop Fort George from being ambushed and destroyed by the American Army in May of 1813. There were many losses of life on both sides, but Fort George saw its fair share of death and violence during the Battle of 1812. And during the fighting, all but one of its buildings suffered extreme damage. Once captured, the American Army used the fort to plan their invasion of Upper Canada. Fortunately for lovers of poulting, hockey, and universal health care, the fort was retaken by the Canadians in December of 1813, and the American soldiers were forced to retreat. British soldiers began the long process of rebuilding the structures, but by the end of the war, Fort George had been abandoned and forces sent south to Mississauga. By the 30s, reconstruction of Fort George began, and it was officially deemed one of Canada's national historical sites. Though the fort would no longer see battles, it was used by the Canadian military as a training base during World War I and World War II. Through the years, Fort George has seen thousands of soldiers filter through its stone walls, but ghost hunters can tell you with a great degree of certainty that not all of them have left. Chasing down the spirits inside of Fort George is quite a task because the location is absolutely massive. There are structures spread out all across the grounds, and nearly all of them have their own unique ghost stories attached. Pick a building, and there's a good chance it has a spooky legend with plenty of eyewitness testimony to back it up. Some of the most active places inside the fort are the blockhouses, which once housed the soldiers stationed at Fort George. And many times during my own investigation, I was aware of the sound of footsteps that trailed along behind me, though there was no one following. I got the distinct impression that I was being monitored by a presence that was not exactly happy I was there. As it turns out, I'm not alone in the feeling. The phenomena has been experienced by countless people who spent time in the blockhouses at night, and it's most often associated with one of Fort George's most famous ghosts. Though he doesn't have a name, many guests often describe him as being a tall, balding man with wispy gray hair. The tall man is often spotted skulking around the blockhouses, peering out from behind the bunk beds and following guests to and from the living spaces. Another of the fort's famous ghosts is a man in white, a quiet, peaceful spirit who's most often seen lounging on the bed, silently watching guests as they pass by. Also reported are a number of playful child spirits that interact with startled visitors by tugging on their clothing and stroking their hair. Now that's my kind of haunting. See, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The paranormal, you find what you look for. If you're looking for the negative, that's all you're going to find. If you're looking for the positive, that's all you're going to find. If you're just open to whatever happens, you'll find a bit of both. Now, this one's a little bit darker, but it kind of grabbed my attention. And I think once I read the headline, you'll understand why. Because it actually involves two well-known historical figures from two different time periods and from two different countries. The strange story of how Walt Disney banished Rasputin's ghost from Disneyland's Haunted Mansion. By the way, folks, just a little side note here. I've actually been to Disneyland several times when I was a kid. For a time, my mom actually worked there, so I was there quite often. And one of my favorite rides always was the Haunted Mansion. Mainly because when I would ride that ride and I knew that the other people on the ride were seeing the same things I was seeing, I didn't feel so strange. See, I'm well adjusted now, and I'm at a point in my life now where I don't give a damn what people think about me. But when I was a kid, that wasn't so much the case. And even though it was only for, like, I don't even know how long the ride is, like 15, 20 minutes or so, whenever I happened to have a chance to go there, it helped me to not feel like quite such a freak, I guess. But anyways, here's the story. The Haunted Mansion is one of the most beloved attractions at Disney theme parks, thrusting visitors into a spooky world filled with dancing phantoms and eye-popping special effects. But there was one spirit planned for the ride who's so scary that Walt Disney himself barred him from inclusion: Rasputin's ghost. On August 9th, 1969, the Haunted Mansion made its debut in Anaheim, California's Disneyland. It's the one I used to go to, by the way, to rave reviews. Disney's Imagineers had managed to capture the picture-perfect representation of a classic haunted mansion from cinema and pull it into the real world, mischievous ghosts and all. The attraction was a technological marvel at the time, featuring a blend of state-of-the-art animatronics and old-school theatrical illusions that wowed crowds and established the Haunted Mansion as a signature Disney icon. But what you might not know is that development on the iconic ride began nearly 2 decades earlier and involved some pretty famous phantoms. Walt Disney first began mulling over concepts for the Haunted Mansion in the 50s, enlisting many of his favorite artists to help bring the project to reality. Initially, the attraction was designed with storylines that would have featured the ghosts of famous historical characters like Jack the Ripper, Guy Fawkes, Ivan the Terrible, and more. Somewhere during the Haunted Mansion's 20 years of development, Disney Imagineer Mark Davis decided that Grigory Rasputin, the seemingly unkillable Russian mystic, would make a fabulously frightening phantom. After all, when it takes stabbing, poisoning, 4 shootings, a clubbing, and a drowning to adequately kill someone, there's a good chance they'll make a pretty scary ghost. Mark Davis began to draw up a suitably spooky portrait of Rasputin, capitalizing on his hypnotic eyes by designing a painting that would gradually morph into an eerie, all-seeing eyeball. The creepy concept was well received by other Imagineers, but when it hit the desk of Walt Disney, he immediately rejected Rasputin's ghost. As it turns out, Disney wasn't frightened by the idea of having the infamous healer take up residence as a ghost in the Haunted Mansion, even with his fairly gruesome demise and dismembered... No, I don't know, they did that. Dismembered penis. But was far more afraid of being sued. At the time, Grigory Rasputin had only been dead for a little over 3 decades, and as such still had plenty of living relatives, with their family members' well-publicized deaths still fresh in their minds. To have used Rasputin in the Haunted Mansion would be an invitation for legal trouble, and to be fair, angering the family of an infamous Russian wizard is probably a terrible idea to begin with. True that. In the end, Disney scrapped the idea of using famous figures in the Haunted Mansion completely. Though echoes of the original concept still linger in the attraction, those who pay close attention can even spot many of these original figures reworked as the Sinister 11 portraits, which hung inside the Haunted Mansion on Orlando's Walt Disney World, complete with eyes that follow you every move. These days, they've been relegated to the loading area of the mansion, sadly with plain old eyeballs. Interesting stuff. Now, I'm going to read this one because this next story kind of mirrors something that happened to me, sort of. But I'm sure it also differs a bit because these article contributors have a tendency to lean towards the negative, and that's all they see. So I differ on several of those opinions, just to clarify. But a witness reports that they encountered a 6-foot dogman in the forests of West Germany in 1972. If you're wondering about the dogman, what it is, hold on a second. I'm going to sound a little bit farther away for a second. Think like in werewolf movies and cartoons when they're like in that in-between form, in between wolf and man, and they're on their hind legs, and they're not like the wolf man of classic films, but they're like the original werewolf. That's kind of what Dogman looks like all the time. Sightings of dogmen, upright walking canines that often resemble the iconic werewolf, have been rising over the last decade, while the eyewitness encounters with these creatures range from bizarre to the downright terrifying. Most reports are fairly recent, usually appearing after the Beast of Bray Road legend began to take hold of the popular consciousness, leading skeptics to believe that most stories of giant dog monsters are simply tall tales piggybacking on the popularity of Wisconsin's Beast. Fortunately, the occasional tale pops up that predates the current dogman explosion. I knew of dogman long before the whole Bray Road thing. So, yeah. Our latest witness report comes from a man who claims to have encountered a dogman in Germany in the 70s. He goes into some great detail, not just about its appearance, but how he believes the creature might be related to an ancient agrarian cult of farmland protectors. In the fall of 1972, while camping, I saw one of these so-called dogmen. I was an army brat living in West Germany in a place called Wildflecken. It was a heavily wooded area, lots of places for a boy of 12 to go camping. I was with a friend. It was about 9 p.m. at the time. The month was November. We had a fire built, and I remember my friend was sitting cross-legged next to the fire. I was directly across from him, standing, doing something. We were in a tiny clearing with evergreens all around. We were talking to each other when all of a sudden this very tall creature standing on two legs, which looked a bit like a German Shepherd, stepped out of the foliage. It was about 6 or 7 feet tall, much like in the Weekend Weird Witness Report. Okay. Um, I distinctly remember the tall ears, long snout, heavy shoulders, long tail, and bent dog legs. Seemed to be muscular in build and had a thick upper body and a narrow lower body. Colored the same as a German Shepherd, this thing stepped over the fire between us and was gone in a quick second. It was extremely fast. Okay, I can't say that, that claim is true or not. Obviously, I wasn't there. Um, However, I would like to tell you about my experience, or my latest experience of Dogman. It was a few years ago, actually, and it was me, my fiance, her kids, and a couple other people decided to take a trip uh, one weekend to a place here in Ohio called Cascade Valley. It's the home of the signal tree. It's a tree that is far over 300 years old that the local native tribes would use as a landmark to find their way home from the river. But I digress. So, anyways, we were visiting this area and we were actually down by the river. There used to be like this really big beaver dam down there that has since been washed away. But we were down at the beaver dam, and it was kind of low uh, water wise. Water was very low, so it was easy to walk, far out. And we were having a grand old time, skipping rocks, just talking, doing whatever. And but then it was, time to go. And I decided that I'm going to track through the woods and attempt to get ahead of them and beat them to the car and make them kind of scratch their heads and go, "What the hell? How'd you get here before us?" kind of thing. And so I let them go ahead of me, and I cut off the trail and went through the woods. And not more than like 8, 10 feet inside these woods, I see a tall figure run by in my peripheral vision. And I turn and look, and it's gone, but it's left tracks. So I start to follow the tracks, and we're cutting through, like we're going towards where the signal tree is, and just on the other side of the signal tree is where the parking lot is. And so I'm following him, and he's ahead of me, and suddenly I guess he had stopped because I went through some low-hanging cypress and some bushes and whatnot, and on the other side of it kind of cleared out a little bit. I mean, it's still forested, but it was like not so thick in this one spot. And I looked up, and there he was looking dead at me. So I'm looking at him, he's looking at me, and I swear to God, you know how like dogs can grin? Like they can smile? That's what was on his face. He was like kind of smiling. I'm pretty sure that's what it was, is he was smiling. But he just kind of did that, tilted his head to one side, and then turned and ran, and I lost him. He was gone. But the thing is like during that whole encounter, not once did I feel threatened. in fact, quite the opposite. I felt like this creature, dogman, whatever you want to call it, was totally on my side. So there you have it. All right, folks. I've only got about 4 minutes left and not a lot of other stories to go, so I'm going to go ahead and call it. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Tune in next time. I'm going to try and figure out like a regular time to do the show again. But the problem is my schedule is constantly changing. I don't honestly have the same days off or day off every week. So what I might have to do is do like a weekend thing and really late night. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But until next time, my pack, my tribe. Peace.